Morning.
Good afternoon. Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Council President Clark and members of City Council, I'm Mark Wheeler, Chief Information Officer. Joining me today are Sandra Carter, Chief Operating Officer, and Chris Donato, Chief Financial Officer. I'm pleased to provide testimony on the Office of Innovation and Technology's Fiscal Year 2020 operating budget. In brief, our OIT's general fund budget totals $112,133,625. In brief, also, this breaks down to $23.8 million in Class 100, $68.7 million in Class 200, and $19.5 million in Classes 3 and 400. Before I open it up to questions for Council, I just want to take a moment to highlight three accomplishments of OIT in the last year. First, OIT's Deputy CIO for Public Safety and Teams successfully secured a $5.5 million grant from the Commonwealth to build a redundant fiber optic network dedicated to emergency 911 messaging, and this will replace outdated copper wire technology. Second, OIT launched our Smart City PHL roadmap, and under an executive order from the mayor, we now have a diverse advisory committee to assist us in its rollout. And finally, OIT City Geo team spoke about our data-driven mapping and open data tools available on phila.gov to nearly 900 attendees of different presentations and workshops, including Tangled Title workshops at the Free Library, the PACDC conference, several meetings of West Philadelphia Promise Zone civic associations, civic tech meetups, our city's Civic Engagement Academy, and a course for the Citizens Planning Institute. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you have about OIT's FY20 budget.
Thank you. Got a couple of quick questions. So let me cut to the chase. All right, City Council. We've experienced an unusual amount of downtime, particularly related to email and internet. I'm sure you may know about it, or maybe you don't.
Yes, we were made
aware
of it.
Tell me what in the world's going on? I mean, all I do is get complaints from staffers, colleagues, everybody about our systems,
Sure.
And it seems like the people, we actually should probably have our own little division of tech support just housed in City Council because, you know, they're nice people, but they're always here. Like, what's going on?
So from what I understand, it stems from a change that we had to make to the Wi-Fi that's open internet for the public to use, the City Council Wi-Fi. So if you're using a city-issued device and attempting to do any type of emailing out on the device, just using that Wi-Fi, there's a difficulty there because over a year ago, we experienced a problem with some spamming on a device in City Council, and the ISP that we engaged for the city had shut off the circuit, and in order to remediate, we had to make some changes around that. The changes that affected council members and any of your constituents using the Wi-Fi just wasn't effectively communicated at all as to what the workaround can be.
Wasn't effectively communicated to
your city council vendor staff and then to staff themselves, so they knew about it. Everyone on their council at large or district council offices would understand, you know, what the workaround would be. So we're going to work with your city council tech team to make sure they clearly understand what the steps are and how we get around the problem by just working with the city net Wi-Fi if you want to use that on the city issued devices or your personal devices just on the city council open internet Wi-Fi.
So who is not effectively communicating? We were not effectively
So I think
communicating.
it's OIT effectively having a conversation on change management with the IT team for city council.
Your vendor.
Yes.
All right, I just want to make sure we're not doing anything.
So, and that's something that I'm working on. We've been working on changing the level of communication that we're having with the departments overall, and this is just another example of where we need to do better.
Okay. All right, so you're relatively new in this position, or?
Since January 2018, I was interim and then appointed in September 2018.
Okay. All right. So I know, like in the past, there were conversations about hiring specialized positions, and it talked about the salary and the office environment are the largest hurdles to hiring. But, you know, of course, we talk to people and residents and constituents, and people whose skill sets seem to match the opportunities. And basically, they've applied and haven't heard back in some time. Is there a process, and I asked a similar question to a chief administration officer, in terms of follow-up as it relates to hiring? Can you kind of tell me how your process works?
So we do get direction from OHR on following both the civil service process and the exempt. So with replies to folks who have applied and haven't, I'll be looking for guidance on how we need to improve and change that process. We recognize internally for ourselves that hiring exempt staff has taken an inordinate amount of time, and our chief of staff and our director of our innovation management program got together to revamp that. And they've gotten it down just through a trial on 3 different positions around 5 weeks from the time that we start reviewing the applicants, do our screening, telephone interviews, and then have our diverse panel of on-site interviews and making an offer to hire. So we need to institutionalize that. I want to hire a recruitment officer that will focus on recruitment, especially recruitment and diversity hiring, focusing on inclusion that way and keeping that process streamlined as possible. So the other piece of that is that we have to let people know who do apply. It just doesn't fall into, you know, a black hole, and they know that we've received it, but for whatever reason we've gone with other candidates that better fit the position.
Okay. In terms of your contract, you show a stark increase in contract participation in 18 and 19. Can you kind of walk me through that, the basis for that, and in terms of the contracts that you are entered into, what's the participation rate for those contracts?
Mm-hmm. So just to make a point about FY18, the contract for the One Philly operation, which was done by Cyber, that really bumped up our number. They had a significant MWDBE component. And in 19, the increases are through more hiring on our staff AUG for selective projects that have a short-term nature, and on the unitary contract for the staff AUG, we've gotten good representation there.
I'm sorry, say it again.
So for the contract that we reach out to for staff augmentation, we're getting good representation as we reach out to different vendors on that contract for staffing.
Okay. All right. Chair recognizes Councilman Down.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of questions. In your opinion, what do you think the 5 biggest IT needs are for the city right now?
Well, I think the biggest need isn't actually in IT, it's in change and process management. We have all organizations, whether it's the public sector, private sector, institutions, are going to have difficulty with change on multiple levels. And with very large projects that can take multiple years, we need to start at the very beginning with the departments on building their capacity to just engage in something that monumental. And I think typically you go into this, thinking that people have wanted this solution for so long, they must be ready. That's just not true. And as you move through the process, instead of pushing back on the vendor to overly customize or overly configure, I think we have opportunities to work with the departments on where they can make very good change management, just optimize some workflows and processes, rather than making the IT solution even more complicated to maintain in the end. So we're working on getting our project management office and then other managers, and even reaching out in our departments with some of the IT directors and key staff to engage in a training program around change management, where we need to both engage to hire the right vendors and know where across the project timeline we need to be doing as much as we can to have the departments focus on that kind of process change.
Do you have anybody in your department that is focused on looking at technology and implementing it as a way of saving us money, specifically? Like looking at different areas of the departments of the city and saying, you know what, if we implemented this technology here, we could save X dollars and only cost us Y.
I think that we look at needs in departments when we have conversations around what type of inefficiencies that they have, or whenever they want to do an upgrade to a existing technology solution, what other benefits can we get out of that? And many of those benefits, because we're service oriented in nature, just come down to a lot of process efficiencies. And I can give you some examples of that if you'd like. But as a dedicated resource, I would say no, it's just a process of the engagement, and both in operations with Sandra Carter and with our project management office with Nick Susie, that's just something we want to have a conversation about or include in the conversation.
I want to bring it up because I always thought the goal of technology is to make the processes more efficient, deliver better customer service to the residents of the city, and to eventually save money by doing the first two.
Well, I would agree with that. That's 100% the goals. More importantly, though, coming back to that change management, we have to be ready to use it well and make sure it was designed well to meet our needs. And with the cost savings, I do think that it's important to look for that. But since our missions are around the public health and public safety, there are some things that we just need, and we want to be more efficient in, rather than more efficient. And if the cost savings comes along, that's great. I'm not sure it's always the driver. For example, the work that our public safety team is doing with SEPTA to create interoperable radio equipment so they can use it below ground in the concourses of the subways. Obvious public benefit there and efficiency there, and thankfully the city's costs are covered by the Act 12 E911 systems. But if you look at cashiering project, which we completed, there were definitely benefits to the public and to operations. With the new system, they were able to add debit and credit transactions at 3 locations that I believe only took cash before. There was a risk in the support model on the old system for the daily payment and posting and the funds deposit, because it was such an old operation. It took a lot of effort to make any type of needed change or rectify any issues. So with the new system, much, much more efficient. And then they were able to go from paper check deposits to electronic. So, you have a lot of efficiencies where people can move for these routine, low touch, or routine, complicated problems to something that could deliver greater benefits for the public.
Do we have any continuing education for city employees around having them become more efficient with the use of technology?
No, we don't have continuing education. We do some outreach around better use of data and data standards with what we call our Geo Exchange group, and we have a developers exchange group. But that's not on the executive level. That tends to be on the operating level itself.
I only bring that up because you heard earlier probably that we're bringing a negotiation course to the city, and 44 to 48 people signed up, and I think that's great. But maybe we should look at that for technology, and I think you would gain. It would make it easier to implement new technology if we had the current workforce more tuned into the technology.
I think that's a great idea, and we have opportunities right now with our Innovation Academy that folks go through. We just completed our 6th cohort of that, and then we've done about 70 individual workshops with our innovation team. And that type of capacity building, or how you work better as a team to work through ideas, I think we could definitely introduce a component around technology there.
Because I think our first goal as a city should be, before we start hiring more people, the first goal is how do we make the current people we have more efficient? And how do we bring them into tomorrow and today's standards for efficiency and technology? And what you used to do 20 years ago in 8 hours, you probably can do today in 2 hours because of technology. So my goal would be how do we make that for everyone working in the city? How do we improve their skill set, basically? So, and then I had another question. It might not be for you, though, but I was just curious in the budget. In 2018, I think the total budget for OIT, it looks to me like it was $138 million. And in 2019, it went to like 92 million. I was just wondering why there was like a 40% jump that year. It had to be, something happened. It's section 21, page 3.
Sure, we can get back to you on
You
that.
let me know.
I'm
Okay.
looking at the difference between those
Okay.
2 years.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll come back on the next round. Thank you. Oh, is there more rounds? Okay. Just two other questions. Are you, I think I've asked this before and I can't remember. CAMA system, do you have any oversight with the CAMA system being used by OPA?
So I am on the steering committee for that, and the technology does run through our budget, but the management is under finance, and I believe that we have representatives here to take any questions if you need.
I think the more you can be involved in it, the better it would be, because I think it's going to be a brand new system. We're going to have to educate a lot of people in OPA about it, and I think that I have confidence that OIT can help them do it. So the more you can be involved, I think the better it will be to make sure that implementation occurs.
I do sit in on the steering committee meetings. We go through a full reporting on what's happening. I do ask a lot of questions, and I'm happy to say that things look good there.
Right.
And in fact, the effort on change management is very good. They just did a project stat for our entire executive team and all of our project managers earlier this year, and I think there was a lot for our team to learn about how they're approaching some of the change management work, which is going to be challenging for them.
Last question, our accounting system. I've heard we're addressing that, the current accounting system for the city. Is that true?
I'm sorry, the accounting system?
The accounting system, the financial accounting system.
Yes, that is programmed for replacement starting this year.
And what will the new system, what is the new system called? What will it look like?
I can't say to that because we're in the planning and scoping stage. So it's going to take our general ledger system, also with the existing ASIS and AdPix. So it's a mix of a number of systems that have been run separately into one project for replacement modernization. The one thing that I can say about that is starting this past summer, we engaged with a group of outside stakeholders. We pulled together what we call a Go Agile Advisory Committee. So this is a diverse group of individuals who are tech leaders in their own companies, whatever that may be, from construction to manufacturing, as well as just outright tech, to help us think through how large projects of this scale get decompressed or modularized, so you could roll out a piece at a time, get the change management rolling in even faster, and make sure that we're building upon the data that we own in our integration model, rather than doing the old school practice, what they call waterfall, where you do a lot of requirements gathering, the team goes off, they spend a lot of time building a prototype, a few years they come back, your entire team that helped them with the requirements is now gone and different, and you constantly run into a number of change orders and delays because you're kind of working in a very close fashion. We want to do it more iteratively, more iterations, greater training, but that also puts a lot of onus on the change management side again.
So the people involved in this change, I guess, is the finance department?
So the finance department and the CAO are the executive sponsors for it, and it's under OIT's budget, so we're working collaboratively on setting up the project management for that now.
Is the council technical staff involved also?
Not that I'm aware of.
I mean, it might be helpful because we have some pretty smart people working in council technical staff, so I would include them because we all want the best product possible.
Yes.
And we thank you. I heard you from my office. I hear you guys are doing a very good job. I haven't been personally involved, but I thank you for your work.
Thank you.
And keep up the good work. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. One quick question. I heard that we may, council, and speaking of council because I've been hearing, we may have to change all of our computers within the next year. Is that a rumor because of the support systems that will be available? What am I? Windows 7.
Oh, the Windows 7.
Yeah, I'm kind of like a technophobe. I'm kind of like a little baby dinosaur in a lot of this, but I'm coming along. Yeah. That's why I had these young, smart people around me to make sure.
Sandra Carter, Chief Operating Officer. What you're referring to, excuse me, is the operating system software. It is going out of support in January, and so yes, we are working with various, later on, excuse me, the servers are going out of support in January and computers shortly thereafter. We're working with the various different departments to identify the PCs that have to be replaced.
Okay, and did we foresee this? Or is this something that, I mean, what's the timeline on our PCs? I mean, didn't we just get?
We've been talking about it for a while. I actually have to get I don't have the date with me for each department. The servers are our main concern, and the PCs come after. We do have some time for the PCs. We have about 1.5 years, I believe, for the PCs.
What's the traditional lifetime of ours? I'm just looking at, just trying to make sure the taxpayers are.
Understood, sir.
Dollars are being protected if
We are actually about 6 to 8 years. We would prefer to be a shorter time span, but due to resources, financial and labor, we're about 6 to 8 years turnover.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Appears to be no additional questions. I want to thank you very much. As always, be prepared to be called back. Get a little closer to crunch time. We tend to call folks back when we have to make the ultimate decisions.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it.